What's going on? Hang on. Where's that coming from? Such a loser. All right. Yeah. So I just started another stream. Doesn't matter. Actually, first thing I'm gonna do while we're here is I am going to share. Add something to that. Psychedelic. So cool. Seeing what's possible with substance. Nearly there. Thanks, Dirk. Substance. Next up, importing into Unity. I'm gonna try and smash through this. I'm pretty comfortable with Unity. The reason I'm not skipping it is so often I find stuff I didn't know about crops up, and I'm like, oh wow, that's nuts. And I like this layout actually. It's kind of an accident, but it's pretty cool. Hey, look at to my left we have. I just need to get a supplement deal. So I'm so scatterbrained, it sucks. Okay, cool. So I'm just gonna dive right in. I'm not skipping it because I opened them. Who knows what I'll find out that I didn't know.
Let me get rid of the grid and show my wireframe.
I did this one. All right, hang on.
I definitely want to duplicate them in my scene and scale. And now you can see the complete mess my computer is. Flora tutorial. And now it's time to open up the assets in the Unity scene that I already have, where I'm going to add these assets to.
So I bought this. Dirk, good on ya.
I'm going to show you how we kind of.
Okay, so this one should be pretty quick, 20 minutes. Let's chop through it.
From 3ds Max, and underneath the 4 textures we exported from the Substance Painter. One thing to note is on my import settings, I do not check this, generate light map UVs,
okay, so probably
because
need to bring the mesh in.
Already created UVs that are unwrapping the whole object. We don't need to generate these light map UVs because Unity will just use those UVs we already have. And
I'm so excited.
Generating light map UVs automatically in Unity can give you some undesirable results, and the UVs we have right now will do just fine for lighting. So that's a little tip. Just go ahead and drag that FBX into your scene. This pink material is just the default material that got exported from 3ds Max. You can ignore it. Usually I just drag my albedo texture onto one of the objects.
What's going on here?
It generates a material where I add the metallic smoothness map. I add.
Alright, let's do this. So he does it an object at a time. Okay, that's interesting. So you gotta name these in Blender. I gotta remember to do that. Directional light. Where's this powerful light coming from? Oh, Blender. Okay. Don't export the light and the camera in Blender. There we go. So he's gonna do them one at a time. Let's just watch.
Normal map. Now this will always give you a fix now little button. Just hit that and it will re-import it as a normal map, which you can see right here. Normally it's on the default, but now it.
Alright, I didn't export the textures. That's what I did. Export textures to the special place, documents, projects, development, Flora tutorial, assets, Flora scene, textures, select folder. Click, 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 click. Okay, here we go. This is so exciting. Can't calculate tangents because it doesn't contain normals. That's weird. Okay, let's keep going.
Imported it as a normal map, which is important. And hit that to add the emission texture. And now you're set. As you see here, the objects don't have good names. This is because in 3ds Max I had to detach them, and I should have named them correctly as I was detaching them. I didn't, so I could still do this in Unity.
So the emissive is the metallic? Hang on.
As you see here, it's on the default, but now it imported it as a normal map, which is important. And hit that to add the emission texture, and now you're set. As you see here, the objects don't have good names. This is because in 3ds Max I had to detach them, and I should have named them correctly as I was detaching them. I didn't, so I could still do this in Unity. I'm not going to do this for now, but that would be a smart.
So I didn't get a mask metallic smoothness or an albedo transparency. I'm going to have to go back. Fuck. That's what happens when you rush stuff. Metallics. Oh, here we go. All right. Crisis averted. Sometimes you just gotta figure it out. So he's got albedo transparency, emission, as opposed to emissive, metallic smoothness, as opposed to what? Metallic smoothness, I've got that in the normal. So let's get rid of emissive and base map. So those are obviously for HD render pipeline, which we're not using, and I will eventually tackle. Emission is this. Metallic smoothness is metallic. Cool, okay. That makes sense. Mask map we're not using, so let's get rid of it. And finally, normal. So technically, all limits. I think what'll happen is all the. Okay, hang on. Let's name this material. Flora. Nope. Okay. Oh wait, no. Oops. Right, let's just follow along with dirt. Oh, hang on. That's the skybox. So that's fun. Cool. We're back on track.
Just select all of the objects, and then you can. I'll give them that material. Type in flora, and it has a very long name that comes from the texture. You can change it later on. So basically, this is what it looks like in Unity.
Mine don't look like that.
Now, first I'll just set it to static, which means it's going to be part of the light baking, which is what we want. Now I have a scene I was already working on where these assets are going to be the last parts I'm going to add to it. And that scene is over here.
Whoa!
It's a nice little colorful garden.
Wowee.
Just drag that. I wanted to do because then I have the ability to actually just gather them individually throughout the scene. What can be handy, and let me name this one right now. Well, let's just say this is the blue.
I'm not going to skip anything, as tempting as I am. This is
drag
my
that in there.
Actual job. It's like scene set up in Unity and things like that. So, man, this looks incredible. All right. I'm pretty inspired.
And start kind of moving your stuff around. Now, because I've detached some objects, for example, these balls, which I wanted to do because then I have the ability to actually just scatter
Look at
them
this.
individually throughout the scene.
Why does mine look like that?
What can be handy, and let me name this one right now. Well, let's just say this is the blue tree. What can be handy
Yeah,
is
okay.
to just select these items, these balls, and parent them to the blue tree. Oh, it's a prefab, so it can't do that. So what I usually do is right click, unpack prefab completely.
I would probably argue you want to get your hierarchy stuff done in the modeling tool. That's what I
And
make
then
my
I
artists
parent
do.
them to this blue tree,
Maybe I'm
so I
just an
can
asshole. That way you can update
move
meshes.
this around like one object.
Anyway, sorry, Dave. Continue.
Scale, rotate.
Yes. If we're doing it this way,
Yeah,
let's
I want
get it
that
out.
in the corner there, so move this to the side.
Let's go all the way.
Now, when you're working with Unity terrains, placement of trees and bushes and stuff like that goes a little different, and it's a little bit more convenient. But we're just working with custom meshes right now, so it's really going to be just moving all that stuff by
Actually,
hand
I don't care what they're fucking named. Alright.
and making sure it is intersecting with the terrain. So now maybe I want to copy one of these and put them on the ground.
I love these guys. See, I should have put the pivot at the base. It sucks. Well, it doesn't. Just relax. I'm gonna do something cube. Let's do that. Oh man, I can make art now. I don't have to
And
just
just
make
copy the
everything
rest
be a
of the
cube.
objects
I could make.
throughout
I
your
could go and
scene
make.
as you're
make ground.
scaling and rotating them,
Me. It's hectic.
making sure you don't really see that these are copies, and
But for now, we'll stick with the ground.
you can still get a lot of mileage out of just a few assets.
Just give you a little cheeky classic
I'll just
dirt color.
place these objects in the scene, and then I'll go into some of the setup I've done for this Unity scene. And I'll copy and scatter these objects around a little more later on,
Oh man,
but I won't bore you with that whole process.
my favorite bit, Ducky.
For this also, we have these individual leaves. You can scatter them around later on. Let's just name this central object green leaf central, for lack of a better name,
Still doesn't look as
and then parent these
good. Maybe I just left too many things shiny.
leaves to that, so we can move it around as a whole. I'm probably gonna use this mostly in the water, because that's kind of where I've used most of the green plants.
Holy shit, look at that.
And the multicolored ones are around that.
So after this, we're gonna jump in and
Um,
watch, get in there.
Now I'm missing some of the smaller objects. And they are below ground here, actually pretty small. So there's the ground cover. I've already added a different kind of ground cover to the scene. which is this, which is actually just a flat texture. But I wanted an extra one that has a little bit more of a 3D
Why is it so
vibe.
shiny?
And this way I can kind of mix them. This is just a texture made in Photoshop with a bunch of circles and a layer style, some drop shadow.
That's cool.
And I made some color variants.
That's a good idea.
Little flowers. And I'm having some, yes, these little mushrooms. And I think that was it. Scale them up a bit so I don't, you can see where they are. I'm going to copy them around quite a bit to fill this all up. But for now, I think it's good to go into the lighting setup a little bit.
Yes.
Which is actually very simple.
Oh.
So for this,
That's good.
I've just used a directional light. The intensity is a little bit higher. I have it set to 1.4, soft shadows, and of course baked, because we want to bake all the lighting in.
Okay.
So that's the main light that's lighting this scene. The other light is actually coming from the skylight, which is here. You just create a material, and I can show you how to do that. Create material, let's call it Sky V2. And then select Skybox. In this case, I've created a procedural sky.
Mine's just really gross. Alright, let's make it less gross.
And you see a little render of that sky here. Usually I just make the atmosphere thickness a little higher, give it a tint, make it a little
I hate
blue.
these colors. I've really fucked up. That's right, it's too late now.
Yeah, nothing too crazy. Something like that. This is about what I've used for this sky. You put that material into this Skybox material slot, and you're done. All these settings are pretty basic. The only thing that I remember changing was upping the bounces of the reflection to 2, which just means that if something is reflected in an object and that reflective object itself is also being reflected, that reflection is also there, if that makes sense. For example, there's this big reflective surface here. If we would see something in this which was also reflecting, and that setting was bouncing, was set to 1, it would be black. But because it's set to 2, you can see a reflection in a reflection. Just try it out, and you'll figure that out. So that's really all I use for lighting this scene. And then I've also added some reflection probes, and I usually add them at spots where I think you just kind of do this by look, where they are needed the most. So here above the pool, which is of course a reflective surface, I wanted a reflection probe. A different reflection probe was in front of this little, I call it a sauna. So these golden buttons and these reflective half spheres on the surface have an appropriate reflection. And the last one I've added here above the table, so some of the reflective surfaces on this table make a little bit more sense. You can go as far as you want, but this is really kind of dependent on how your scene is being has been built up.
So I don't have anything reflective
So,
here, so
and I might add a couple of them later on. So that is basically the lighting part. I'm working with 2019.3, by the way, and in that I usually choose progressive GPU. If you have a PC that can do VR, then your GPU is probably good enough to use this. Goes pretty quickly.
oh, it's way better.
I set the bounces to the maximum, which is 4. And I usually have all the settings at the default settings. To check my light maps, I render it first times just at a very low resolution, and once I'm happy with it, I render it at the default medium. I've added in some fog, and I made it kind of a funky blue turquoise, I think you would call this color. Yeah, that's just add that to taste. And that's really it. As I mentioned, the UVs we created for the materials will automatically be used for light mapping as well. And if you want to see, go here under shaded, go to bake light map to see if it's all working properly.
Whoa.
And let me just render it at a very all working properly.
So this is why I'm glad I did this. Like, you might know something back to front.
Go here under shaded, go to bake light map to see if it's all working properly.
Sick.
And let me just render it at a very low resolution for now. Most of this scene had already been baked. But here you can see, and it's actually, because it's a progressive light mapper, it will start to render the parts you see in your viewport first. And here you start to
never clicked this.
see everything being light mapped. This is a good way to check if everything's going correctly, if you're if the UVs are being picked up, that you haven't forgotten any areas. But this is kind of what it should look like. And this is also a way to see if you forgot to set some things to static, because then there will just remain kind of the transparent wireframe look here. But it seems that I've set everything as static, and it's all rendering. And this is where you can really see those bounces, kind of giving that the bouncing the color of that tent, which kind of gives it that warm look when you're inside of this little space. Yeah, this is pretty straightforward. Whoops.
If anyone wants to learn Unity development, all I can say is it's like Animal Crossing, but the assets
sluggish,
are free.
Of course, it's
but it'll cost you your whole life.
It's taking some compute power. But as you can see, the GPU does it pretty quickly. It's only like 40 seconds now. So we're just discussing the light sources I'm using. What I forgot to mention, there's also some emissive materials. So for example, in this little sauna area, this area here is also set to an emissive material. So this is, of course, also a light source in this scene. Okay. almost done. I'm just gonna wait for it to finish.
Love these little blood mushies.
Finally, it after the light baking is done, it renders your reflection probes. Imports the light maps. The reflection probes. And you're done. So yes, this emissive material here is also the reflection probes. And you're done. So yes, this emissive material here is also baking, and just make sure that with the emission map, this is set to baked, which I think by default it is, but it's a good thing to check. Otherwise, you can see this also when you turn on the bake light map. So this is kind of the basic setup for lighting that I have. And the other thing would be good to mention is the post effects. So for post effects, what you do is you add a post-process volume to the scene very quickly. You set it to global.
Wait. He's just like laying out all this incredible information that I know some of this, but not like this. I don't know how to use it well. Maybe that sounds a bit like, oh, I know how to do this. Yeah, sure. You didn't do it. Dirk did it. There's two like really good sort of like, I don't know what do they call it? Scandinavian like 3D artists, 3D VR artists. Well, it's probably hundreds. Dirk at Work and Nam, and they've like just blazed this path for me. And to me, it just makes me think that like it's just this like Scandinavian surrealist culture. Well, there probably is something weird's going on to create such a high density of this beautiful art style. Anyway, I'll stop. No, you know what? Never apologize unless you've done something wrong. And praising other people is not that. Holy shit! Holy shit. This is like some new shit basically. Like this is special. So I'm a Unity like person basically. I don't know if developer, designer, it's kind of this weird mix where I started out mostly doing visual like this kind of stuff, but like had just learnt to code, and now I see code and design is essentially not the same. It's not always the same thing, but for me they're extensions of the same thought process, which is moving back and forth between like making stuff and then making stuff do stuff basically. But I've been very much, it's especially because I'm like, you know, I'd say now I'm like an intermediate, well, probably even pretty well developed coder, but you know, in the past I was learning, so like I had to spend so much time getting stuff to do stuff that the making stuff kind of fell to the wayside, and now I'm trying to get back into spending more time making stuff as well, because I want to make beautiful stories. Actually, and then the next bit is am still a writer, I guess. I don't do any writing. I've written a fair amount in the past. Like I was a commercial copywriter and I wrote a lot of short stories and things like that. So like the whole reason I learned to do any of this was to eventually make, you know, stories. So I need to also make some of them, because right now I've just accidentally become a mid-level coder. Oh my god, this looks so good! Duck! Holy shit! I'm getting emotional. Look at this. Yeah, it's just. Do we even need this? Yeah, we need this. We need a better color for it then. Let's give it this little cut off Animal Crossing situation. Or maybe we can have it go off into the distance. Or maybe we can make it like that. Go like that. And bring it in. Make a little situation. Yum. Mate, I'm in the best mood. All right, post-processing. Fuck.
Very quickly, you set it to global add a post-process volume to the scene. Very quickly, you set it to global and I'm not sure why this happened.
What Unity version am I in?
You give it its own layer. You set it to global and I'm not sure why this happened. You give it its own layer. I thought I actually called this post. Thing would be good to mention is the post effects. So for post effects, what you do is you add a post-process volume to the scene very quickly.
Maybe I need to add the post-processing package, perhaps. Advanced show preview packages. That's fine, Captain. Oh yeah, cool. So anyone who for some reason is watching this, just add the post-processing package. But first, add previews. Add the post-processing package. What's going on? Got one real head in the stream. Is it in? Oh, here we go. All right, cool. I sort of know what's
you set it to global and I'm not sure why this happened. You give it its own layer. I thought I actually called this post, but probably some project settings got overwritten when I imported some other assets. Doesn't matter as long as it's not on the default layer. Just give it its own layer. Create a profile. Make settings and make sure that on your camera there's a post-process layer where you select the correct layer where you put your post-process volume.
Hang on. Yep, okay. Oh no.
And then you just basically do the settings the way you want them. I used to use quite a lot of ambient occlusion, but I kind of stopped doing that because I kind of stopped really liking the look of it. And as you saw in the Substance Painter part, a lot of the ambient occlusion is already kind of baked into the textures. You could have have ambient occlusion be baked in your light mapping as well. But again, it's kind of a taste thing. I don't really like that look too much. I think it's a little cleaner if you just do it in the textures.
Ooh.
So I don't do the ambient occlusion in post anymore.
Okay.
But I do add a little bloom.
A little bit of bloom.
Not sure why it's not. I don't think I'm seeing the post effect right now.
Oh.
But it's very simple. I just add a little bloom. It's very subtle. Some color grading. Maybe make the temperature a little warmer. I do set the mode to high definition, tone mapping mode to neutral. Just kind of evens out the colors a little bit more. Make sure you don't get those like 100% white colors. Kind of flattens it out. And I usually just kind of play with these trackballs. So, and that's really just dependent on the colors that I'm using in my scene. There's no real rule for this. The lift is for the darkest portions, the mid-range tones, and the lightest portions. So I would suggest you just play around with that a little bit, but make sure you don't overdo it. I have auto exposure on, but honestly, I'm not even sure if it's doing that much in a scene like this. So also, yeah, the most of the look and feel of this just comes from a very basic lighting setup in Unity, and it's mostly the colors and kind of the gradients I create in Substance Painter. Yeah, so this is basically how I set up a scene. I'm going to be scattering these newly created assets throughout the scene a little bit more, and that's pretty much it.
Dirk. All right, so I'm just gonna finish this up and share it because I'm like, my mind is blown. So let's go to stream view.
In Gravity Sketch, this is the way
Thank
I
you,
like
Dirk.
to set up my
You're
scene.
my hero. little camera swap there. I changed the camera direction, make it feel a bit more like I've got multiple camera angles. Camera 1, camera 2. All right. Oh man, this is incredible, babe. Look at this.
Oh, it's so pretty.
It's so pretty. I'm like, my mind is blown.
Do you know what'd be cool? If you like change the size of one of the big trees, a
Sure.
little bit shorter.
Ooh, little short tree.
Mm.
I got my editor in the back.
And same with the mushies, I guess. Just having that little bit of like
Oh yeah.
extra variation. Yeah.
You're so smart.
Yeah, you can make one of them of the back one like much larger.
The big mama.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that beefy baby.
Mm.
I'm like, this is the most excited I've been in, I think, years.
Ooh. Give us a look, zoom out.
Yeah. I was saying on the, it's a bit like Animal Crossing, but everything's free.
Mm. I think with the trees, make the big back one bigger and the front one smaller.
Okay.
Just like further back. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. Well, it can be from any direction, but I get you. I get you. It is definitely the prominent one. Maybe should I put
Too small.
too small? Oh no,
Love you.
love you too.
I'm being too bossy.
No, it's fine. This is good. That's called being a designer.
And I think I've rotated as well, so it's like a different angle.
Yeah, of course. This is why
There you go.
me and Chloe used to make games together before she literally got sick of me, but still agreed to marry me. Suck shit. And she would do the set dressing because I just put everything down and I'm like, that's done, finished. But then Chloe became a psych student, but is working in VR or studying part of it. Sorry, babe. I didn't mean to dox you.
Okay,
Oh man, I got my one-on-one with my creative director soon, and he's gonna fucking lose his mind when he sees this. it's too big. Alright, let's do a little bake. Whoa! Oh, alright, that ain't right. Do you bake with the light map on? High resolution. Let's see how that goes. Oh, Dirk. Did that work? Here we go. This is so satisfying. Why is this one light doing this? Why do you look like that? Maybe let's turn the post-processing off before we do the bake. No, it's still there. Okay, let's give it another crack. Generate lighting. Why do you look like that? Is that... Where's the main camera? Maybe it's something to do with the camera being orthographic? Is the lighting affected by the camera? I don't think so. Lighting. Where do I clear the light map? I'm pretty sure. Sometimes you just gotta start fresh. You'd go on too quickly. Is this all still static? Static, static, static. Cube. Oh, cube's gotta be static too. Let's maybe play around with that a little bit, give it a bit of pap. No, I reckon we're on the right track before. Something like that. Alright. Essentially the same. Okay. Ah, Dirk, what a legend. So next stop on this crazy magic carpet ride is we're gonna go into Dirk's so it's just these two flowers getting popping. Is everything here baked? Light maps. Maybe the direction of light. Yeah, it's baked. Let's just like give the light a little wiggle. See what happens. We clear the light map. I'm pretty sure there's a clear button. I think we need to start fresh. A bit of skybox. Maybe let's just give these a little wiggle. Alright, come on. Don't look weird. Oh no. It's just like this one thing. Let's just turn it off. Come on, buddy, what are you doing? Delete. Alright, there we go, that'll do. Don't go rat mode. Okay, this is fucking sick. Dirk, 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 Dirk. I feel bad because I'm like, you know, not bad, but like I'm like, turn that on. Main camera, turn that on. That's a bit too bloomy. Looks a bit tacky. You know what? This is my first time I can get a bit tacky. So, but let's de-tacky it a little bit. Just a little bit. Okay. What do we think about these colors? Maybe the cool down the lower colors. And where's this color grading new neutral temperature. Oh, spicy. Let's shrink this a little bit for the photo. Could we get it onto a square? I reckon we could. 3, 3. Bring you back here. Just to get that like Animal Crossing situation going on. People love that shit. Ready to go. Let's see if we can get this. Whoa. Hey Pops, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. I'm doing a live stream on the internet, so I can pause it, or you can talk on the live stream at the same time and be a special guest. What do you reckon? I don't mind either way.
Yeah. Who's the rest of the live stream group?
No one.
Oh, you're just streaming out into the who knows who's taking any notice of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, include me.
All right. Hey everybody, we have a special guest, Douglas Gowdy, of Duncan Waters fame and sustainable infrastructure, local food garden campaigner and executor of said campaigns, builder of the infamous Bush House. Doug, how you going? My father, obviously.
I'm good, Sam, son. How are you?
Yeah, pretty good. Just figuring out how to put this microphone. I'll get you on the stream properly one time. So I've started a TV station that no one watches, but no one watches regular TV either. So
Does that mean that they're just listening, that there's no visuals?
oh, there's visuals. There's visuals.
All right, so what they're seeing is you talking to your dad.
Yeah, essentially, and also me doing art.
Oh, okay, that's good. What art are you doing right now? Because for them who are listening and watching, I have no visuals.
All right, let me. I'll send you a text. I'll send you a photo.
Oh no, just keep going.
No,
It's
there we go.
private.
It's all right.
I don't know how to look at a text and talk on the phone.
Well, now you've got an incentive to find out. Or you can look at it later. It's okay. It's pretty low pressure. I just so what I've been doing is streaming my like personal creative development as a kind of experiment, because it's like recording similar to, I guess, like when you record a music session or something like that, and exploring with having, you know, like different content mediums, if that makes sense. So like just playing around with like, you know, what is content nowadays, if that makes sense, which it probably does. But you're hearing my half distracted streaming voice, so we don't have to do this. But how you going?
Oh, that's good. I'm well. I've just come back from dentist swim hardware store.
The trifecta.
North Queensland, and I'm aware that down in Melbourne, not knowing who the audience is or when they're seeing it, but I'm guessing that they're seeing it now because it's live streaming. So for them who are in Melbourne, from North Queensland,
It's a bit cold.
Given the current weather, cold, wet, windy.
Aren't you guys going to get the Arctic blast or something? Or is that just propaganda?
We're getting the Arctic blast. Our overnight temperature comes Saturday morning, the minimum's going to be freezing for us, 13. I've spent the last 3 days looking for a doona in preparation for said cold snap tomorrow morning.
Hey, do you have Zoom set up?
I did have it set up one time. It didn't seem very hard. I used it with the North Queensland Conservation council meeting about 6 weeks ago.
Do you want to come in via Zoom? And you can see what I'm
give it
seeing.
a shot. How do I know how do I do that?
Hang on, let me figure this out.
If you send me a text with the Zoom address or whatever it's called, I'll get onto the iPad, I reckon.
Sure.
Or I can just do it off of this here phone.
I don't know.
I'll try it off of the phone.
Are you a page or a person on Facebook?
I'm a person, I would hope. I've never been a page, although I've wanted to be in a court where I could bring important documents and be a page.
I'm upset like this. Hang on. This system that I'm using, I'm obsessed with it. I haven't quite figured out the audio quite yet. To get every feed in. I had my friend come in while I was OBS camera 1, OBS camera 2. That doesn't seem to be working. Is my OBS working? Here we go. Virtual cam.
I've got my phone on and I've got my mobile data on, so I'll go into.
Oh, there we go. Now we're cooking.
I'll try and get into something or other.
Hang on, I'm gonna make another Dado vision. So you can basically create different camera layouts, if that makes sense. And then yeah, I'm switching camera 1, camera 2. It's pretty fun. Alright, let me just and then I'm going to take you through this world that I didn't build it. Basically, I've been following this tutorial of this artist I really like, and I was just about to go into his world in VR, and you can be my, my immensuance. What's the word? I don't know. Muse. Muse?
Oh, Muse works. That's a role that I seem to have with you, which is a great role to have. I'm going to go inside, which I've not done since I've turned up from my dentist swing hardware, and get my iPad so that I can try and use that as a Zoom device.
So you recovered?
Wait on, I've got. Now I'll go into Chrome, or how would I know where to find you?
Alright. I'm going to send you a link. Hang on, what do? I've got a meeting going. This will be fun. And I've just been live streaming it all. I'm just whatever. Let's just no editing. No one's watching. This is what I mean. I feel like I'm really carrying forward the family tradition here of just generating reams and reams of unwatchable content.
Yeah, well, it works for me. Obviously, I'm looking to see if I have. Here's Zoom. So if I go into Zoom, the Zoom app.
Yeah, you're going faster than I am at the moment. I'm still trying to figure out how to share the meeting. So, 1 second.
Right.
Oh, here we go. So there's it's like a 10-digit number. So do you know how to use it via a meeting ID? If I read that out?
I've got a join a meeting button in front of me. Should I hit that?
Yeah, let's see what happens.
Okay, join a meeting. And then what's the ID? If you probably need to send me an email that I'd need to then cut and paste.
No. Is it asking? The meeting ID is a 10-digit number.
A what?
A 10-digit number, so I can read that to you.
Yeah, go on then.
893 0567
Yep.
7899. Oh, hang on. I could send you a URL actually, but anyway, too late.
7899.
That's it. And then the last for a password. I'm gonna send you an email as well. Sorry, you can do that, of course.
So I'll do join and see what happens.
See what
there.
happens.
See what happens.
Okay.
And then I need that password.
And the password is. In streaming this, anyone else could join, so we'll just call this a talkback radio show. But no one's going to. Like, sometimes people watch this after the fact. And one time, so basically every time I've done this, I've had like 1 or 2 or 3 people watch maybe, except for one time when 11,000 people watched. So I don't know what happened that time.
What was the thing there?
I was actually doing 3D sculpture, which I think is much more visually engaging. Me doing this sort of talkback radio shtick, I don't think anyone really likes, but I'm committed to it.
Tell me this password, or do you have one?
I've got one. 8 lowercase p for Peter.
Right on slow. 8 lowercase p for Peter.
Uppercase M for Mary, J for John.
J. Yep.
Lowercase v, the number 2.
Done. And then continue.
Continue.
Well, we might be looking at each other in a moment. It's me up on the screen. Join with video.
Yeah, get in there. Admit. You're in. He's in. Okay, so give me a minute. I'll kind of need to concentrate. Are you in? Where's the video?
I'm looking at myself.
There you go.
Now I'm seeing you. Hi, Sam.
Hey, how you going?
Right, well, this is exciting for me.
So yeah, you're on the stream. Is your audio coming through? Hang on.
I've just got it on the phone at this stage, and I'm getting the visuals. It's probably because I haven't turned the...
Yeah, turn your mic on, because then I can mix it into the sound board.
Turn the mic on. What the hell does that mean? How do I turn the mic?
Tap the screen. There'll probably be a picture of a microphone. Tap the microphone.
I'll just turn my sound up. Now, I'll keep fiddling about. Touch the screen.
Yep. And then it should bring up a picture of a microphone. End of the tutorial. Results. I feel like I've stolen time from the gods. Thank you so much, Dirk. Up next, I'm going to explore his VR world. No, it's fine. You're good. Don't. You're a guest. You're not allowed to do any on-air audio troubleshooting because you'll immediately become obsessed with that. Give it 2 seconds, and I'll tell you. I can still hear you. I've got you on this mic. Okay, so on the iPad, yeah, if you tap the screen, it'll bring up some sort of interface. Is that changing the? Is there a menu?
Switch camera, switch to gallery view.
Yeah, cool. So how it brought up those menus and stuff like that, when you do that, it'll also bring up a picture of a microphone, like an old.
Would it be under my little corner image of me? I'll get rid of my image.
Maybe.
No, I'm not seeing. Join audio. Would that be right?
Yep. Sounds right. That. Like, is connecting audio and can't hear you yet. Okay.
Hello. How's that?
I think that's good. All right, I think we got you. Hang on, I'm gonna end this call. If it goes wrong, I'll just call you back. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me apart from the phone?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
I'll turn the phone off.
All right, awesome. This is great. This is actually perfect practice because I'm gonna try and have special guests come on.
It's perfect practice for me because this is the second time I've Zoomed in my life.
Yeah, great. Hang on. Window capture, add one. Okay. Create new. This is so fun. Create new, zoom, okay. Doesn't let me fucking screen capture Zoom. Why not? Alright, that's fine. This is what happened last time. Alright, give me 2 seconds, Dad. Of medium focus, or essentially no focus. Display capture, display zoom. Okay. There we go. Now, can you see the screen there?
I've got me on screen, so
No. Switch to me.
I can see a big image of your magical mystery garden.
Yep.
And I can see the edge of the couch where I know you were sitting on. So maybe point your camera different.
Nah, you're banned from any audio visuals. So you're just you're a guest. No one gets to go on Jimmy Fallon and tell Jimmy to.
Now wait. I've put the iPad on the long axis vertical, and now I can see all of you in the corner.
That's all right. Can you see you?
Yes.
Yeah. See, this is my special guest. I've made a new channel now called Dado-Vision. Hang on,
Wait on. I'm trying to hook up with the camera to wave. Hi, everybody. Person one. Maybe Sam.
James might watch.
Hi, James.
Hi,
if
James.
You're watching sometime later.
All right, now I'm just going to and it's just like I love being on the computer. So I'm just like streaming from my computer, like it's like pirate radio situation. You know what I mean? Like this is...
I do. I remember before you were born in England, all of England had a full lockdown with the BBC and stuff, and no one else was allowed to have any of the music in the 1960s broadcast out, and so they got an old ship and moored it out in international waters with a bodgy little radio antenna and so on, and started broadcasting, and hence the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, when they were very young men, got to be heard by the populace in the beginning of the modern cultural era.
It's yeah, I feel like it's crazy how culture and technology intertwine, you know. It's fun.
And it's explosive. You know all my big story about we're in the middle of the biggest cultural revolution that this planet has ever seen, and then amplified in the directions that we may take through this coronavirus right now. We are in a position to share instantaneously. Couldn't get a better example than us here now, and that one sole person who's looking in thinking, what the?
Yeah, what have we got here?
And, to be able to share this stuff real world, the virus is a great example of us knowing that Australia's over the worst of it, that America's been ruled by a bully who thought he could just out-bully the virus, and on, all of the human insights and understandings and frailties and shared needs that we all have. What a weird time to be alive.
It's pretty cool. Pretty much the best one you can get, really, unless you're a feudal lord. But even then, if a tooth fell out, you're dead. I
know. And even feudal lords, they had cold feet at night. You know, they didn't have snug houses with slow combustion. You know, everything was primitive compared to our technologies, our materials, our constructions, and our knowledge. We're running on knowledge in the end, and it's fabulous.
Look, you're not going to want to hear this, but I actually have quite cold feet right now.
Because you're in Melbourne. I've just had a swim in the ocean.
It's freezing beautiful here, but I love being cold.
Well, yeah, that's why you're in Melbourne, and I don't like being cold.
It's because you grew up in Melbourne. I guess we all just to flee our origin temperature.
Well, that's it. That's a good way of looking at it.
Humanity changing its body temperature generation to generation.
Yeah.
Are you seeing this?
And
Look at this. So watch the screen now. All right, I'm taking over. I'm gonna watch the screen for a minute.
Go on.
So look at this, right? So this is what I've been doing. Can you see? Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah, cool.
Yep.
Hang on, I gotta get you back up. There we go. Because we need this reaction shots. So essentially, what I've done is I've gone through and created this geometry. You know, it's all just the maths that you learnt in math school. Dad's a scientist, so he had to go to math school. You know, that represents each of these points as a vector in space, and each of these lines is a connection between the vector, and then the computer uses that to render the planes between them. But I don't have to think about any of that because computers do it all. So I rendered all this geometry using VR. So I'm literally painting these spaces in virtual reality. You know, I'm saying dot here, plane here. You know, so I'm creating these geometric shapes. Then I go into this system. So this is what I've just been doing. This is the stuff that I've been learning how to do. And I can create, you create these UV maps, which is essentially that relative to a 2D plane, where would each of these, you know, 3D vector points exist? So you can then create like a corresponding color map. And then for each layer of the color map, like Photoshop, you can add different like filters and effects so that you can, say for example, oh, hang on, I've lost it. Where we go? Say for example, here I've put this little situation. Hang on, why am I not zooming in? What's going on? See this like spooky hand situation here. That's like one layer, and then this bumpy texture is actually done through not changing the geometry, but the computer processing a second layer as like, oh well, I need to make this sort of look like it's got shadows even though it doesn't.
And to drape it over the virtual 3D shape itself.
Yeah. So like that, I did, you know, this is all like creating these colors and layers, and then that all bakes out into a super simplified version that I then put into. So this is like 30 different layers of complexity, all gets baked into these 4 color maps that then this system uses to then process that information, right? And then it's got its own color of space, and I can move the geometry around and make this cute little situation. It's crazy. I'm obsessed.
And then what happens? Do you introduce animals or creatures or insects or something? And is there dynamism to this in the end?
Whatever I create goes in.
But is it always static, whatever you finish, or does it generate its own life through algorithms of if this happens and that happens, sort of logic streams? So if you throw a pebble into your virtual pond, if you'd made one, then the ripples flow out?
So it only ever does what I tell it to do, but I can tell it to do that. That's not my speciality though. But you can create animations, which are like, you know, looped sequences. You can create, what it does have like baked into it is essentially a physics system for free, which is pretty cool. So hang on, let me just say mesh renderer. All right, so I'm just going to put a collider, a mesh collider on these. So that's like the hard shell. Convex, very expensive. I normally wouldn't do it this way, but I'm just showing you. 3D object sphere. Get that sphere in here. I'm going to give the sphere a rigid body, which is giving it the properties of physics. So I can track its velocity, its angular velocity, its force, everything like that. So then when I have my sphere, I can then drop it in the pond, so to speak. It won't do much because nothing else really is set up that way, and I couldn't be bothered.
Go on, the
see
suspense is all right, and it rolled down through gravity.
Yeah. So you get it for free.
So you can tell this world that you're creating have gravity, and I guess you could have a gravity of G1 or gravity of G point, you know, the moon or whatever.
All right, I don't know if this is going to come in, but I can go to the physics section and I can set the gravity in all directions, whatever that means. I don't know. I can set how bouncy things are. It's crazy. It's like, you can see why like I completely changed my entire life's path when I started using the system. I was just like, this is it. Everything's in here. I don't have to go outside ever again.
Right. Oh, there's when you were 3.
Hang on. I'm just gonna do a Twitter announcement. sharing my dad. You know what? It's kind of not as aesthetic. All right, fuck it.
Oh, that'll get you another listener viewer for sure.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Maybe your mum might go. Oh,
you know, I haven't shared my Twitter with either of you guys because it's just sort of like
that's good.
it's just like it's so aspirational on here. It's like I'm so cool on Facebook, but on Twitter I'm a bit of a nobody, which is good. You know, like a bit of a loser.
Well,
So
I've got
far.
to be honest with. I'll tell you how many times I've thought of using Twitter, let alone used it. They all come to zero.
Twitter's the best, but
well, Twitter's a lower age range than I want to. But I'm very interested in becoming comfortable with Zoom. This is my session too. So the first one was painless and easy and intuitive and fall in, and it worked and no drama. And now so too this. So thank you.
no, it's all right. Well, do you want to? Is this all right? Do you want to stay on, or you want to check in?
Oh,
like,
I'm loving it.
Yeah, cool.
Fun. I'm impressed as I ever was with you. I love what you
Because
do.
I set up a TV station, Sam TV.
Yeah.
I'm calling it.
Dave?
I'm calling it Sam TV.
Yeah, good. All one word. And then do you have a domain name like samtv.com? And
No.
No. Okay.
I'm just freestyle. I'm just like I'm doing heuristic content development where each day, essentially, I just like, you know, now Dad's on. On the weekend, I did something.